Welcome to Uncorking the Issues, pouring clarity into Temecula Valley politics. I'm your host, Grape Vine. This podcast discusses political and civic issues. The views expressed are solely those of the host and guests and do not represent any political party, campaign, school district, or government entity. Today's episode is titled, The Board Members Who Saw School Spirit and Screamed Chippendales, a bottle that is equal parts school spirit, bad judgment, and Temecula Valley unified once again, asking the community to hold its glass and say, wait, they said what? Because this week's episode starts with something incredibly normal. High school athletes supporting other high school athletes. That is it. That is the scandal. A group of Temecula Valley High School water polo players showed up to support the baseball team. They painted letters across their chests spelling out bears. They were wearing Speedos because, brace yourselves, they are water polo players. I know. Shocking. Next thing you know, the track team will wear running shorts. The football team will wear shoulder pads, and the swim team may even appear near water. Somebody alert the board. But instead of seeing a bunch of teenage boys showing school spirit, Jennifer Wiersma and Joseph Komrosky apparently saw an emergency meeting with the Department of Moral Panic. Jennifer Wiersma reportedly reposted the image and asked whether the teams were now an OnlyFans crew. OnlyFans, about high school boys. Let that breathe for a second. A board member looked at student athletes, minors wearing athletic uniforms for their sport, and her brain apparently took the express lane straight to adult content. That is not protecting children. That is taking a normal student moment, throwing it into the adult entertainment blender, hitting puree, and then acting surprised when parents say, "Excuse me, why are you serving this?" And then Joseph Komrosky, never one to see a small fire and resist bringing a leaf blower, reportedly compared the image to a sexually provocative striptease and said they looked one step closer to Chippendales. Chippendales. Again, about teenage boys. At this point, Temecula did not need a dress code. It needed an emergency eye to roll evacuation plan. Because when the adults in charge of schools are the ones making the conversation weird, maybe the problem is not the kids. Maybe the problem is the grown-ups who cannot look at a water polo uniform without hearing imaginary nightclub music. Let's be very clear. These students were not trying to launch a Vegas residency. They were not auditioning for Magic Mike, Temecula edition. They were not running a subscription platform between innings. They were supporting their school. They painted bears across their chests. That is high school spirit. That is exactly the kind of goofy, harmless, loud, ridiculous thing teenagers do at games. It is not a constitutional crisis. It is not a policy apocalypse. It is not the fall of Western civilization in a Speedo. It is water polo boys cheering for baseball. But somehow, in the hands of Jennifer Wiersma and Joseph Komrosky, it became another Temecula Valley unified morality circus, complete with ringmasters, spotlights, and two adults juggling bad judgment in public. And this is where the roast really begins. Because Jennifer Wiersma and Joseph Komrosky love to talk about protecting kids from curriculum, protecting kids from books, protecting kids from flags, protecting kids from ideas, protecting kids from whatever the outrage menu is serving that week. But when actual kids needed adults to behave with restraint, dignity, and basic common sense, what happened? The adults took a student photo and attached adult entertainment references to it. That is not protection. That is projection with a school board badge. And parents saw it immediately because no parent wants to get a call saying, "Hey, your son's photo is being discussed online by school board members using words like OnlyFans, striptease, and Chippendales." Imagine being that parent. You send your kid to school. Your kid plays sports. Your kid supports classmates. Your kid ends up in a school spirit photo. Then two elected adults decide to turn that photo into a public morality lecture with a side of inappropriate adult comparisons. That is not leadership. That is what happens when someone confuses Facebook comments with governance. And honestly, Temecula deserves better than board members who treat Instagram like a policy committee. If there was a genuine concern about dress code, there was a grown-up way to handle it. Call the principal, ask about the context, talk to the athletic director. Review the social media policy. Clarify whether school-issued athletic uniforms are appropriate in school spirit posts. That is called process. It is not glamorous. It does not get clicks. It will not make you the star of your own outrage reel, but it is how adults are supposed to govern. Instead, we got the Temecula Unified Special. Step 1. See something ordinary. Step 2. Add culture war seasoning. Step 3. Post before thinking. Step 4. Create chaos. Step 5. Act like the backlash is persecution. It is a tired recipe, but apparently some people keep reheating it. And can we talk about the phrase dress for success? Because Joseph Komrosky reportedly framed this as students needing to look professional. Professional? They are high school water polo players at a baseball game. They were not presenting quarterly earnings to shareholders. They were not interviewing for a finance internship. They were not cutting the ribbon at a municipal bond hearing. They were teenagers at a game wearing sports gear. If Joseph Komrosky wants to talk about dressing for success, maybe he can start by dressing his public comments in basic judgment. Because the most inappropriate thing in this story was not the Speedos. It was the adults looking at minors and reaching for adult entertainment references. That is the part parents cannot unhear. And Jennifer Wiersma's reported explanation that she did not realize they were water polo players does not exactly rescue the situation. It may actually make it worse. Because if you do not know the context, maybe do not post. That is not advanced leadership theory. That is not a doctoral seminar. That is not a school board governance retreat at Temecula Creek Inn with pastries and breakout sessions. That is basic internet survival. Do not know what you are looking at? Do not repost it with a sexualized caption about minors. There. Policy solved. No consultant needed. But this is the deeper issue with Jennifer Wiersma and Joseph Komrosky. They keep positioning themselves as guardians of children while repeatedly showing the community that their judgment has more holes than a campaign lawn sign after wind season. They want to police what students see, read, wear, and hear. But the minute restraint is required from them. Suddenly, the bar is buried somewhere under the football field. And no, this is not about being anti-dress code. Schools can have dress codes. Schools can have social media rules. Schools can decide what belongs on official team accounts. Those are legitimate conversations. But when the conversation involves real students, real minors, and real families, elected officials do not get to freewheel their way into adult comparisons and then say, relax, it was about policy. No, policy is what you discuss in meeting. This was commentary. This was public. This was personal. And it landed on students. That is why people are angry, not because parents cannot handle rules, not because the community opposes standards, but because the people yelling about standards forgot to have any. There is a certain irony in watching two board members try to lecture teenagers about professionalism while communicating like a neighborhood Facebook thread that has been left in the sun too long. The students showed more school spirit than the adults showed self-control. The boys painted bears. The adults painted themselves into a corner. And here is the thing. These students will remember this. They will remember that a moment meant to support their school became a public controversy because adults made it weird. They will remember that people in power talked about them online. They will remember that their bodies became part of someone else's political performance. And families will remember which leaders treated students like human beings and which leaders treated them like props in another episode of Temecula Culture War Theater. This district has real issues. Teacher compensation, student achievement, special education needs, facilities, staff morale, campus safety, bond language, trust, so much trust. Trust in the board, trust in leadership, trust that the adults in charge can get through one news cycle without turning the district into a headline. And yet, here we are. Once again, Temecula Valley Unified is not in the news because of a brilliant academic turnaround, a teacher retention strategy, a student success initiative, or a community building moment. Nope. We are in the news because two board members looked at a water polo team photo and apparently needed a fainting couch. Some districts celebrate their athletes. Temecula Valley Unified School District gets a morality panic with screenshots. And that, right there, is the brand problem. Not the students, not the Speedos, not the painted letters. The brand problem is leadership that cannot stop stepping on rakes and then blaming the lawn. At some point, voters have to ask whether this is the governance they want. Do they want a school board focused on student achievement, or do they want a school board that turns teen school spirit into adult innuendo? Do they want leaders who solve problems, or leaders who create them and then issue temporary apologies? Do they want people who understand the difference between policy and posting? Because that difference matters. A policy protects students. A post can expose them. A policy is reviewed. A post is reactive. A policy is accountable. A post is often just someone's worst impulse with a caption. And when school board members are dealing with minors, the standard should not be, well, technically, I deleted it later. The standard should be, I did not sexualize students in the first place. That is not a high bar. That bar is on the floor. And somehow, here we are, watching elected officials trip over it in cleats. So what should happen next? First, Jennifer Wiersma and Joseph Komrosky owe more than political fog machine language. They owe the students and families a clear public apology that names what went wrong. Not, sorry you were offended. Not, I did not have context. Not, people are twisting my words. A real apology. I used inappropriate language about students. I should not have reposted or commented on identifiable minors that way. I will not do it again. That is what accountability sounds like. Second, the district should make clear that student images are not content for board member culture war commentary. Third, any dress code review should happen through actual governance channels, not Instagram story time. Fourth, board members need training, and not the symbolic kind where everyone nods through a PowerPoint and then goes back to posting. Real training. Student privacy, ethics, social media boundaries, public official conduct, how not to make everything worse in one caption. And fifth, the community needs to stop accepting chaos as normal because it is not normal. It is not normal for parents to worry that their kids will become targets of political commentary by the very people elected to serve them. It is not normal for student athletes to be compared to adult entertainers. It is not normal for a school board to need a public reminder that minors deserve dignity. And it is definitely not normal for the adults to be the source of the inappropriate language. Temecula Valley students deserve better. Parents deserve better. Teachers deserve better. Even the mascot deserves better. The Bears were just trying to support the baseball team, and somehow they got dragged into a full-blown adult panic spiral. So here is today's poor. Jennifer Wiersma and Joseph Komrosky did not expose a student problem. They exposed a judgment problem. They did not protect kids from inappropriate content. They created it. They did not elevate standards. They lowered the conversation. And they did not make Temecula Valley Unified look professional. They made the district look like it needs a media literacy class taught by the water polo team. Because apparently the students understand context better than the board members. The kids knew they were cheering for the Bears. The adults saw Chippendales. And that tells us everything. This has been uncorking the issues, pouring clarity into Temecula Valley politics. I'm Grape Vine. And until next time, keep your corkscrew handy, your facts uncorked, and your school board standards higher than an Instagram comment section.